This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Two things I won't miss about 2020: the word unprecedented and the phrase, what's the worst that could happen? Here's what we got for y'all. We'll take a look back at the US economy's rocky tumble this year, which included a series of financial shockwaves. Plus, we'll tell you how physicians are going viral by using social media to combat misinformation about COVID-19. But first, here's what you need to know right now. All eyes on the Senate today as Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell sidesteps a vote to increase stimulus checks from $600 to $2,000. The House approved the measure Monday, and Senate Democrats, led by Senator Bernie Sanders, have found a few allies across the aisle, especially after President Trump called for the increase. McConnell hasn't outright opposed that move, but he said today the Senate would consider the increase along with a couple other Republican priorities, namely launching some kind of election fraud probe and repealing legal protections for social media companies.
Those are the three important subjects the president has linked together. This week, the Senate will begin a process to bring these three priorities into focus.
By tying the popular with the controversial, McConnell has at least slowed down a vote on increased stimulus checks and might even be spiking the effort altogether. This all creates a tricky situation for Senate Republicans, including the two up for re-election in Georgia next week in a pair of races that will decide which party controls the Senate. Sputnik 5. Is it a plane? Is it a spaceship? No, it's actually Russia's COVID-19 vaccine, and it's starting to be administered across the world. The vaccine was rolled out today in Belarus and Argentina, making those the first countries outside of Russia to use the vaccine. Sputnik 5 is facing criticism over how quickly Russia's government approved it after testing the vaccine on only a few dozen people. Belarus and Argentina did their own testing of the vaccine and apparently seemed satisfied. Meanwhile, stateside, Texas and Florida have started distributing COVID-19 vaccines to residents 65 and older, skipping the order of distribution suggested by the CDC. The CDC recommends healthcare workers, along with nursing home staff and residents, to be first in line for the vaccine, followed by other frontline workers and all people over the age of 75. Instead, in Florida and Texas, younger frontline workers will be bumped to the next phase of the vaccinations so older residents can receive the vaccine sooner.
We're told we're in the mid 500s, and the line went to they had 600 doses.
Not many administrations have had to deal with mass distribution of a crucial vaccine, so the federal government is kind of making up their own roadmap as they go along, and so far, they're falling short of their targets.
We certainly are not at the numbers that we wanted to be at the end of December. You heard talking about 40 million doses for 20 million people. I mean, even if you undercount, 2 million is an undercount.
Now, all eyes are on President-elect Joe Biden's plan as he prepares to take office. A member of his COVID-19 advisory board said Biden plans to enact the Defense Production Act, also known as the DPA. It's a Korean War-era law that gives the president broad authority to compel U.S. companies to prioritize production of supplies in the interest of national defense. President Trump used the law earlier this year to speed up testing and production of medical equipment. Meanwhile, Pfizer has been trying to negotiate its own deal with the government. Pfizer said it could provide more than 100 million doses of its COVID-19 vaccine it promised to the U.S. in the first half of next year if officials demand suppliers of those raw materials prioritize the company's orders by using the DPA. Biden officials say before the law is enacted, a range of factors need to be considered, including how to invoke the law in a fair way without favoring one company over another. For the first time in almost 2 years, the Boeing 737 MAX once again takes flight across the U.S. skies. It was a successful American Airlines flight from Miami to New York, marking the end of a dark chapter for this airplane. Back in March of 2019, the Boeing 737 MAX was grounded worldwide after 2 deadly crashes killed 346 people. The accidents revealed serious problems with a new automated flight control system, which pilots weren't familiar with. Boeing has since fixed those issues. Following a lengthy review, the Federal Aviation Administration approved the changes last month. Airlines in Brazil and Mexico already resumed commercial flights with the plane, but American is the first U.S. airline to use it. Southwest and United plan to wait until next year to reintroduce the plane. The US economy has had quite the journey this year. It seems like a distant memory, but we started this year strong. We'll end this year with more than 20 million Americans receiving unemployment benefits and waiting on additional relief from Congress. Newsy's Bianca Fascini and Meg Hilling break down everything that's happened in between.
The U.S. economy is ending 2020 much differently than it began.
And as we begin the new year, our economy is booming, wages are soaring, workers are thriving, and America's future has never, ever looked brighter.
January had record-breaking job growth, with unemployment dropping to 3.5% in February. And the markets were promising until the COVID-19 pandemic hit, decimating our health and economy practically overnight. A plunging stock market on March 9th, the worst point loss since 1987, was the first of several shockwaves. President Trump insisted the downturn would be quick.
The hardship will end. It will end soon. Normal life will return, and our economy will rebound very, very strongly.
Just days later, Congress passed a $2 trillion relief package. It helped, but only for a short time.
Everyone, all of us who are lucky enough to have a retirement account, has seen it going down.
In a 5-week span, more than 26 million Americans filed unemployment, more than all the jobs added after the Great Recession.
So in the meantime, we can't pay rent, we can't pay utility bills.
President Trump and some states like Florida focused on ending COVID restrictions. Other countries trying the same strategy abandoned those plans as cases surged. And now we end the year with record-setting daily deaths and hospitalizations. Still, with vaccines rolling out, officials are projecting a rebound.
My expectation, and I think many people have the expectation, that the second half of next year the economy should be performing strongly. We should be, we should be getting people back to work. Businesses should be reopening and that kind of thing.
Overall, the economy remains in a vastly different state than a year ago. National unemployment is sitting at 6.7% as of November, and weekly jobless claims are on the rise again. And 12 million Americans are behind on their rent. Millions more are behind on their mortgage payments. And a staggering number of restaurants closed this year. 110,000, according to the National Restaurant Association. But even amid the misery, there have been some positive developments. Americans have paid down their credit card balances, about $82 billion worth, from March to May alone. New business applications are breaking records as well as entrepreneurs fight for a piece of action in the economy's rebuilding. Both hopeful signs that 2021 could be a year of rebound as long as the virus comes under control. For Newsy, I'm Bianca Fascini.
Doctors are using a tool that I'm pretty sure wasn't covered on the boards to tackle misinformation about the coronavirus. As if they weren't busy enough, doctors have turned to Twitter and TikTok to fight COVID misinformation and disinformation coming from politicians, conspiracy theorists, and even well-intentioned fellow scientists. I don't know whether to gleefully thread all the creative content or hang my head in shame that it's come to this. Our investigative team tells us more about how health professionals are giving new meaning to viral content.
It's been announced that we are on track for the first time
Meet 2020's social media influencers. Epidemiologists and doctors taking to Twitter and TikTok to fight mis and disinformation that's coming from politicians, conspiracy theorists, and even well-intentioned scientists.
There's no easy way to disentangle misinformation and disinformation with COVID.
Dr. Ellie Murray is one of the epidemiologists gaining traction for her tweetorials, explanatory Twitter threads filled with graphs and data. She's created TikTok videos on mask wearing, and her hand-drawn infographics have been translated into 40 languages. Since March, she's gained over 55,000 followers.
At first, I was kind of leaving it to people who work a lot on coronaviruses and emerging infections, but I realized they were so busy actually tackling the virus that they didn't have a lot of time to explain to people what was going on.
Twitter has tried to indicate good information, handing out blue check marks to doctors and scientists. But in some cases, it backfired.
Twitter's verification process is based on you are who you say you are. But they're not able to really say, you are a person who has expert thoughts on X, Y, or Z aspect of coronavirus.
And so scientists and doctors who weren't trained epidemiologists were actually spreading misinformation.
These are people who are trying their best to be helpful, but they just don't know what they don't know.
In fact, some of it can actually be traced back to traditionally reliable sources, like academic journals. By now, tens of thousands of COVID-related papers have been published, but getting them out quickly has meant that several prestigious journals have had to retract articles.
There are a lot of articles where actually they've made a fundamental mistake that wouldn't have been made if they had had an epidemiologist on the team to put that right.
And once information is out there, it's hard to debunk.
Okay, 300,000 people saw this really alarmist tweet and are freaking out about it, but actually it's completely giving the wrong message. It's a lot harder to undo an impression about something, especially where there is that emotional content to the original message.
For those who are turning to Twitter, Murray's created a list of trusted experts.
You want to look for people who are willing to change their mind as the evidence changes because, with coronavirus, this is all new.
Lauren Knapp reporting with Reen Alias, Newsy, Washington, D.C.
When you're back, we'll have something for you that I don't include often, an appearance from a better-looking black guy with a higher profile. What do migraines and Queer Eye have in common? Okay, I admit that sounds like a setup to drag the Netflix show, which isn't the case. I personally enjoyed all the Georgia episodes from seasons 1 and 2. Karamo Brown, one of the Fab Five from Queer Eye, is using his platform and his own health story to help others suffering from migraines, something that affects 35 million Americans, mostly women. Newsy's Lindsay Thies chatted with Brown about his migraine journey.
There's a lot going on in here.
If you've watched Netflix Queer Eye, you may know Karamo Brown is all about having the right language to express how you feel.
You wrote, "I'm scared to let my team down."
For Karamo, finding language for how to talk about suffering from debilitating migraines didn't come right away. He struggled with it in school.
For me, my experience is that I had to shut out the light. I mean, it has to be completely dark. I was feeling nauseated. I couldn't move. I couldn't even function. But yet I had people in my life saying, no, get up. You got to go to class. No, you're just trying to fake it.
Where are you at now with your migraine journey? And has the pandemic impacted that at all?
Oh my gosh, the pandemic has completely impacted that. Because one of the things for me with my migraine journey is that stress triggers it. And so the minute I'm feeling stressed, and think about what 2020 has been. It has been stress after stress after stress, grieving the loss of opportunities, finances, people we love, our health, so many things that were happening. It brings on that stress. And then all of a sudden I would realize I was having more migraine, episodes.
The majority of my patients have found their migraines have gone up during this COVID-19.
Dr. Susan Hutchinson tells Newsy it's not just a bad headache. Inside the brain, a peptide increases and causes serious inflammation. The symptoms, things like sensitivity to light and noise, brain fog, and vomiting.
The bottom line is it involves both peripheral and central nervous system. Central would be once it gets up into the brain. It involves blood vessels. So think about it as, I've heard it termed as a sterile inflammatory condition, but it's an inflammatory event.
The two have joined forces with a campaign called No Migraine Mission, part of the goal to get that language out there.
All together. Yas, queen.
Yas, queen.
It's about not being ashamed and not thinking you're alone. It's okay to say to people this is what I'm experiencing. And if they try to dismiss your feelings, don't let that bring you down.
Lindsay Thies, Newsy, Denver.
If you haven't done so already, shame on you. By now, you should know how to reach us. If not, hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag NewsyInTheLoop. I'm sorry for raising my voice.
I remember seeing prison for the first time. Ultimately, there's nothing any prison can do to contain a virus. It's like something out of a science fiction movie.
PJ, he's one of 150 inmates to be released early due to COVID-19.
How you be?
I'm okay. I'm alive.
The idea of social distancing in a prison is ridiculous.
I told my parents it was really important that they don't come near PJ.
I almost did not come because I can't hug him, and it feels...
I'm a little bit nervous about him being here, but you know, it's better for me to be at risk than for my parents to be at risk, so.
Not being able to see my parents for 2 weeks is definitely the hardest part of this experience.
2 years of just a nightmare, and then I can be a part of this family.
Rural hospitals are in a tough spot right now, mainly because fewer physicians practice in rural areas, which has made staffing during the pandemic an obstacle. National reporter Dan Grossman shows how dire situations become even worse when some of the limited hospital staff start battling COVID themselves.
When the time comes to look back on what we've been able to accomplish,
as you can tell, I've led a very eclectic life.
Most would only hope to have a resume as diverse as that of Kurt Papenfuss.
The boys got to meet, the Pope. One of my claims to fame is giving a Rambo a shot in the butt.
There was also Everest, spending time with Neil Armstrong, and most recently, going toe-to-toe with COVID-19, a battle that left Kurt alone in an ICU for 9 days.
There's a darkness in this illness that I can't say I've ever said about any other illness.
Being the only ER doc at a rural hospital in Colorado, it was a fight Kurt was all too familiar with, and one that affected far more than just himself.
Worst case scenario, you would have to divert patients if you don't have people in the door to care.
Stella Worley is the CEO of Keith Memorial, the 25-bed hospital where Kurt works along the Colorado-Kansas border. Kurt's illness sent her unit into a tailspin as they frantically looked for his replacement.
We are a trauma level 4 hospital, so keeping that physician on staff 24/7 is what we are required to do. And it is getting to be more of a challenge to have hired physicians out here in rural.
According to the National Center for Biotechnology Information, about 20% of our nation's population lives in rural areas, yet less than 10% of our nation's physicians practice there. It is a shortage that has plagued rural healthcare since even before COVID. For Stella, it meant a search for an ER doc that ended with a fill-in who had to drive 10 hours from Texas last minute to cover for 2 weeks while Kurt recovered.
And I'm very worried about rural healthcare because a lot of rural healthcare is teetering on the brink right now.
According to CDC data, COVID is killing rural Americans at a rate 3.5 times higher than those living in metropolitan areas, bringing this issue to a head.
If everybody wants to do a miracle, just sit down right now with me and take a big breath in and a big breath out.
An issue that has led Kurt to see more of life's beauty outside of his eclectic experiences.
If you're recovering from COVID like I am and almost died, you just appreciate a light bulb on a Christmas tree.
I'm Dan Grossman reporting.
While many of us have worked from home this year, we've let our pets make special guest appearances during our Zoom chats. Guilty. So if our colleagues can virtually see our beloved pets, how about vets? National reporter Stephanie Stone tells us about how this pandemic led to an increase in telemedicine for animals.
The pandemic has proven we can do almost anything from our couches, computers, and phones. We've grown accustomed to all things virtual, and it seems our pets are used to it too.
Really highlights the value of something like this. And it also really highlights where society is living. So many of us, even before the pandemic, turned to Google, turned to the internet first. That's our first step in almost everything.
Dr. Sarah Michelle is the lead veterinarian for Vetster, which provides on-demand virtual care for your pet.
Consultations, meeting pet owners in their homes where they are with their pets, and helping to address urgent and preventative care health conversations to them.
The company launched in October of 2019, and while not formed because of the pandemic, they certainly evolved at the right time.
The veterinary clinics themselves are feeling a really heavy surge With the pandemic, it's been a pretty crushing situation for them because we already, as a profession, had some staffing challenges, just not enough veterinarians for how many pets and pet owners there are.
Pet owners, she says, often have a hard time getting an appointment, or they have to wait in their cars with their animal outside of their clinic. And according to Vetster, 50% of pet owners don't even have an established home clinic.
There was a poll recently that showed 37% of American households welcomed a new pet into their home during the pandemic. Pandemic puppies are a real thing.
I think that it offers a great addition to the tools that I have at my disposal. I have my stethoscope here. Telehealth can be used very much the same way.
Dr. Douglas Kratt is the president of the American Veterinary Medical Association, which serves some 96,000 vets across the country. They've been through a lot this year, adjusting to new norms like all of us, and as in human medicine, they've had to perfect or initiate virtual options.
It doesn't replace your veterinarian. What it does is help your veterinarian better serve you and your family member.
There are, he says, some obvious challenges.
I can't hear if your dog's coughing. I can't listen to the heart. I can't listen to the lungs via telemedicine. So that wouldn't be amenable.
But he says overall, it's effective and especially worthwhile if it's with your established vet. But if you don't have one, Vetster and other businesses like it aim to help.
There are so many pets and pet owners who sometimes sit on things and aren't sure if they need to go into a clinic, really appreciate that sort of peace of mind in the middle of the night that no, you don't need to pack yourself up and get into a vet clinic. You know, this is something that you're okay to wait until the morning.
And she says they're prepared to help all animals, from pocket pets to exotic and large animals. It's yet another adjustment and another pivot in 2020. I'm Stephanie Stone, reporting.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow for more In the Loop. Same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.